Emilia Quinn stood hesitantly on the grand steps leading to Le Palais de Civas, clutching a small, creased printout of the restaurant's menu. The modest florist, who worked long hours at a tiny flower shop nestled on a quiet street, had been saving every spare dime for months for this night. She had long dreamed of dining here, letting herself imagine the taste of famed French dishes she'd only read about. Tonight, finally, it was real. She wore a worn but clean dress, faded from years of wear, and a thrifted navy coat that was a bit too big. In her hand was a plain tote bag, soft and stretched, much different from the sleek clutches she'd seen carried by other patrons arriving. Her heart fluttered wildly as she stepped inside. The restaurant dazzled her senses. Gleaming chandeliers sparkled overhead while polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of candlelit tables. Waiters moved with studied grace, dressed in crisp tuxedos, while clusters of elegantly clad diners murmured in French and English. The air was thick with the rich scent of garlic, herbs, and roasting meats. Emilia felt small, out of place, but also filled with a nervous thrill. At the host's table, she timidly asked for the bouillabaisse, the signature seafood stew she had practiced pronouncing countless times. "Bouillabaisse," she said softly. The waiter paused, then smirked with a sharp edge of amusement. "It's pronounced bouillabaisse, madam," he said, loud enough to draw sideways glances. "Maybe you'd better try something simpler." The amused laughter from nearby diners stung. Emilia's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. Before she could recover, the manager approached, voice cool and dismissive. "That dish is not suited to your palate. May I suggest the burger instead?" Humiliated and overwhelmed, Emilia shrank back, feeling utterly out of place in a world that was supposed to be hers, if only for one evening. The sharp ripple of laughter that echoed quietly through the softly lit dining room settled heavily over Emilia. Around her, a few diners exchanged smirks, some whispered conspiratorially with lowered voices, glancing her way like spectators watching a misstep in a carefully choreographed dance. Yet, not all eyes shared that cruel glint. A handful of patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding her altogether. Some glanced down at the gleaming wine glasses or fiddled with their cutlery, as if embarrassed by the exhibition. Emilia felt the walls closing in and the heat of 1,000 judgments pressing down on her bare shoulders. The waiter's correction had been calculated to wound, his sneer a gauntlet thrown. Then the manager's cold dismissal, suggesting she order the burger in such a place, was a heavy, unmistakable final blow. She had hoped for a quiet celebration of a life marked by simple joys and hard work, but instead found herself the subject of quiet mockery, exposed and unprotected. Without a word, Emilia rose from her seat, the fragile knees threatening to buckle beneath her, and edged her way toward the exit, invisible threads of whispered remarks following her every step. She made it outside into the cool night and slid down on a nearby bench beneath the flickering street lamp, the artificial light casting long shadows across her bowed head. For a moment, she let the tears come, hot and slow, stinging her skin but not falling freely. Her breathing was shallow, trembling with the weight of humiliation and crushed hopes. The city hum around her dimmed to a soft background murmur as memories surged unbidden through her mind, pulling her back across years and moments that shaped this fragile dream. She remembered the dawns when she had woken before the sun to tend to the flower shop, arranging colors into bouquets with patient hands. The early mornings at markets when she bargained quietly but firmly for the freshest blooms, always wide-eyed and grateful for the chance to work. The hours spent over faded notebooks, scribbling down expenses, carefully balancing her small budget. The lunches skipped, the nights she sat alone making plans for this very dinner. Emilia's thoughts settled on the weathered storefront window she passed every day after work, Le Palais de Civas, its gold-lettered sign gleaming under streetlights, promising a sophistication that seemed like a distant star to her life. She had whispered to herself so many times on those walks, "One day, as if the simple phrase could bridge countless worlds. There was also the private reason she clung to this occasion. Amelia's mother had passed 2 years earlier, a gentle woman who had nurtured her love for flowers and kindness in small acts. Her birthday had been yesterday, and Amelia had promised herself that tonight, she would honor her memory with something extraordinary, even if modest in means. It was to be a quiet rebellion against grief and loss, a claim to joy where there often was none. She thought softly of the tiny pleasures she'd given up: new shoes, a warm scarf during last winter's chill, a rare night out with friends, just so she could save enough to be here, to taste this night. She had asked co-workers how to say bouillabaisse, timidly practiced the words in front of her bathroom mirror to avoid embarrassment. And now? That dream was tattered, slashed by condescending voices and indifferent eyes. It was more than a dish mispronounced, it was a statement that some places, some people, didn't count, didn't belong. But beneath the ache, a quiet ember glowed in Amelia's chest. She had endured many small hurts before, brushing away dirt, adjusting arrangements late into the night when customers overlooked her work. She had never spoken up, never asked for more than simple respect. But this night, robbed and diminished, stirred something resolute within her. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat, breath steadying as she sat on the bench, enveloped in the deep hush of the sleeping city. Around her, the glow of street lamps threw soft warmth, a modest shelter against the cold judgment she had left behind. The smells of the bustling kitchen behind the restaurant reached faintly through the closed door, faint hints of garlic, lemon, and sea salt, the very scents she had looked forward to. Amelia allowed herself to sink slowly into the stillness, gathering the quiet strength she had always carried beneath her shy exterior. The night had not gone as she wished, but it did not have to define her. After several minutes, she rose, her legs still trembling but her spirit sharpening. She bent to gather her tote bag, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. No, this wouldn't be the end of the story she had dreamed of writing for herself. Somehow, she would find a way to be heard and valued. With a final glance at the restaurant's shining doors, Amelia stepped into the night, ready to face whatever came next, holding tightly to the memory of a dream that had once been hers. Amelia sat on the bench a while longer, letting the quiet of the night settle around her. The sharp sting of humiliation was still fresh, but it was mingled now with a growing sense of determination she hadn't anticipated. Wiping the last dampness from her cheeks with the sleeve of her coat, she straightened up and looked back toward the grand entrance of Le Palais de Cévez. The polished oak doors sparkled under the soft streetlights, a world away from the modest life she led, yet somehow intertwining with her own story that evening. Her eyes drifted along the side of the building, where a narrow alley ran beside the restaurant. Without quite knowing why, she stood and began to walk there, the weak glow of street lamps guiding her steps. The alley was quiet, with the occasional distant sound of a car passing by, the city's pulse still slowing into the night. Near the delivery entrance, a large metal door marked "Staff Only" caught her attention. The faint flicker of light slipped out from underneath it. As Amelia neared, she caught snippets of voices carried on the cool air. 2 staff members stood just out of her sight, speaking in low, frustrated tones. "I'm telling you, we shouldn't be using seafood from the supplier after the last inspection," a man said, his voice tinged with anxiety. "The storage conditions haven't improved. It's a risk." The other, a woman, sounded equally concerned. "Management's been pushing to keep everything quiet. They fixed the paperwork, but the actual conditions are still borderline. If word got out, the restaurant would be shut down for good." Amelia's heart quickened. Food safety violations? Improper storage could mean serious health risks for customers. The elegant meals she had dreamed of tasting could be underpinned by negligence. She stepped back into the shadow, her mind racing. The humiliation she'd felt just moments ago suddenly took on another shape. This was more than a personal slight, it was a matter of public health. Pulling her phone from her tote bag, Amelia reread the confirmation email for her reservation. The reservation was real, the experience, even if not the one she imagined. Now she held information that could not be ignored. Carefully, without drawing attention, she scrolled through her phone to an online dining and review platform she had downloaded weeks before in preparation for tonight. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tapped "Write a review." She began typing, her voice steady though her hands betrayed her nerves. Tonight, I visited Le Palais de Sèvres with excitement and hope. As a simple florist who saved diligently to experience this renowned restaurant, I looked forward to savoring the famous bouillabaisse. Unfortunately, my evening was clouded by not only condescension from staff, who correct pronunciation loudly and suggest simpler dishes as if I do not belong, but also by troubling concerns overheard among kitchen staff regarding seafood storage and recent health inspection failures kept from the public eye. Amelia paused, searching for the right words. She didn't want this to feel like a rant but a truthful account from someone hurt and wary. She added, "I was embarrassed and made to feel unwelcome by the waitstaff and management. I overheard that the seafood was improperly stored and that management suppressed information about health violations. Customers deserve honesty and respectful treatment, regardless of background. I hope this review brings attention to these issues so everyone can enjoy safe, welcoming dining experiences." Scrolling back over her words, she hesitated just a moment before tapping "Post," and then sharing the review on her own social media feed, tagging Le Palais de Sèvres. To accompany the review, she uploaded a photo she'd taken earlier, the bright but slightly wilted Gerbera daisy she had carried from the flower shop that morning, a symbol of the small, simple beauty she held on to even in hardship. She took a slow breath, feeling the weight of what she'd just done. It wasn't easy, putting herself out there like this, exposing her vulnerabilities for all to see. But the sting of humiliation had been transformed into something sharper, a call to fairness and honesty in the world she navigated every day. The quiet night seemed a little less oppressive now, illuminated by a newfound purpose. Tucking her phone back inside the tote bag, Amelia took a last look at the restaurant's stately facade before turning toward home. The month-long countdown, the sacrifices, the bruised pride, they all blended into a complex tapestry of struggle and hope. Walking down the street, the evening's cool breeze brushed against her face, carrying with it a quiet promise. Her story was no longer silent. It was a small voice raised for respect, for dignity, and for change. And in that small act, Amelia found a flicker of strength to carry her forward. Amelia's review began as a quiet ripple but quickly gathered momentum. It was shared first by local friends who admired her courage, then by a popular food influencer known for spotlighting both high-end dining and issues of fairness within the industry. Within hours, the post had soared through social media platforms, sparking a wave of discussion that went far beyond Amelia's initial experience. Comments poured in, some condemning the elitist attitude she faced, others revealing similar stories of belittlement at exclusive venues, and many expressing solidarity with her quiet dignity. The hashtag #DineWithDignity trended briefly on local feeds, accompanied by photos of simple pleasures enjoyed by everyday people, championing the right to be treated with respect regardless of background or appearance. People shared personal anecdotes of times they had felt small or dismissed for reasons as trivial as clothing, speech, or the way they handled menus. The story found its way into local news outlets the next morning. Reporters contacted the city health department and, in turn, officials revisited Le Palais de Sèvres to conduct an unannounced inspection. What they found added tangible weight to Amelia's claims. The seafood storage area was not only improperly maintained but also bore signs of ongoing neglect. The seafood was stored at incorrect temperatures, and several containers were unlabeled and past their recommended use dates. The inspectors confirmed that the restaurant had narrowly avoided public knowledge of these violations before, after last-minute corrections during a prior assessment. The news spread quickly, and public outrage peaked. For a restaurant famed not just for luxury but an impeccable reputation, the revelations struck hard. Fines were imposed, and the establishment was temporarily ordered to close to conduct thorough renovations and implement better safety protocols. The management faced sharp criticism from health authorities and the community alike. Internally, the restaurant's management responded swiftly to the public relations crisis. They issued a carefully crafted apology, emphasizing their commitment to improvements but avoiding direct admission of wrongdoing in relation to how Amelia was treated. Meanwhile, the waiter responsible for the humiliating correction was suspended pending further internal review. Staff morale wobbled in the fallout, as the story exposed fractures in customer service culture and workplace attitudes. Through it all, Amelia was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Messages flooded her phone, many from regular customers at her flower shop, neighbors and strangers who admired her bravery for speaking out. Among the messages were heartfelt notes from people who had long suffered similar indignities in exclusive services and had never found the courage to speak up. Some offered invitations to community gatherings, others shared stories of their own battles against subtle cruelty and exclusion. The narrative expanded from Amelia's story into a broader conversation about inclusion, respect, and equity in public spaces, a movement born not from high office or grand speeches, but from one modest florist's resolve. She became a symbol, an everyday champion for dignity in a world that often favors appearance and pedigree over kindness and fairness. Within weeks, local organizations dedicated to consumer rights and service fairness called on businesses to adopt more inclusive training and policies. Public discussions hosted in community centers attracted diverse crowds, many inspired by Amelia's authenticity and quiet strength. The restaurant's temporary closure was followed by announcements of mandatory sensitivity training for staff and upgraded safety measures to meet higher standards. Through her actions, Amelia had sparked more than change at a single restaurant. She had ignited a community's demand for respect and fairness that rippled outward. While she never sought the spotlight, she embraced the unexpected influence she'd gained, not as a queen of the dining world, but as an ordinary woman who refused to be silenced. In the midst of the storm, Amelia returned to her flower shop each day, her demeanor subtly transformed. Her eyes held a quiet fire that those who knew her noticed, a calm confidence replacing the earlier timidity. She continued arranging bouquets with the same gentle care, but now there was an added grace, a dignity earned through standing firm, through turning hurt into meaningful action. One evening, after closing up shop, she sat quietly at her kitchen table scrolling through messages, a soft smile touching her lips. Somewhere in the tangle of notes was an invitation from a local advocacy group asking her to speak at an upcoming community event about kindness and respect in service industries, a platform she had never imagined for herself. Amelia's journey was far from over, but as she looked ahead, she carried with her the conviction that dignity is a right, not a privilege, and that sometimes, the simplest voices can spark the most profound change. Weeks had passed since Amelia Quinn's quiet revolt against Le Palais de Civez became the talk of the town. The humiliating night that once haunted her now felt like a distant storm, replaced by a calm renewal that settled deep within her. She returned each day to her flower shop, her sanctuary, where the shuffling of petals and the soft clink of scissors offered a steady rhythm, grounding her back to the life she cherished. Though she still dressed simply, in soft cotton dresses worn just enough, a faded cardigan over her shoulders, something had shifted in the set of her shoulders, the way she met the eyes of her customers. When a local family brought their small children into the shop, she no longer crouched uncertainly at their height but stood proudly, greeting them with genuine warmth that came from a place of clear self-respect. Her smile was no longer timid but bright and sincere, a quiet reflection of the courage she had discovered within herself. One crisp afternoon, Amelia was tidying the front display when her phone buzzed with a message that made her pause. It was from a customer service advocacy group she had only recently heard of, the City Guild for Fair Treatment. The message was brief but deeply meaningful, a warm note of thanks for her bravery and honesty, an invitation to speak at their upcoming community forum to share her story and encourage greater kindness in service industries. Amelia read the invitation twice, her heart pounding with a mixture of surprise and quiet pride. Speaking publicly had never been on her horizon, but she felt ready now. This was more than a gesture of gratitude, it was recognition of the stand she had taken, a validation rooted in truth and dignity. Days later, she also received an email from Le Palais de Sèvres management. It was an apology, carefully crafted and courteous, expressing regret for the discomfort she endured and reaffirming their commitment to better staff training and customer respect. Amelia read it thoughtfully but chose not to reply. Responding might reopen old wounds or imply acceptance of what they had done. Instead, she found comfort in knowing she had already moved beyond that painful chapter. On a leisurely walk after a busy morning at the shop, Amelia passed by the restaurant once more. The familiar facade stood unchanged yet carried new signage boldly displayed in the window, under new management, dedicated to excellence in hospitality and inclusion. The words glimmered under the afternoon sun, a clear promise and a marker of change wrought through public voice and accountability. Amelia slowed for a moment and caught her own reflection in the glass. The woman looking back was the same humble florist wearing a simple dress, but the eyes held a quiet strength that the soft smile barely revealed. This was no longer a story of shame or rejection. She had reclaimed her dignity, and it shone gently beneath her surface. Back inside her shop, she arranged a bouquet of vivid sunflowers and delicate daisies, bright, cheerful blossoms emblematic of resilience and hope. A young customer stopped nearby, a shy girl clutching a small handful of coins, eyeing the flowers with wide wonder. "Would you like me to help you choose one?" Amelia asked softly, kneeling to the child's level. "You don't need many coins to make someone's day special." The girl smiled, nodding as Amelia carefully bundled the blossoms into a simple, charming bouquet. The child's laughter rang as she left the shop, and Amelia's heart swelled with a familiar warmth. In that moment, she wasn't just selling flowers. She was bearing the quiet proof that dignity doesn't come from wealth or status, it comes from courage, kindness, and the willingness to rise above indignity. Amelia had faced ridicule in a place that shone with gold and crystal, but she had emerged untouched in spirit. She didn't need the trappings of luxury to feel whole. Her life, her choices, her simple acts of bravery and grace were enough. As afternoon light bathed the little shop in soft amber, Amelia took a deep breath, savoring the comforting scent of fresh blooms. Surrounded by the quiet beauty she nurtured every day, she smiled, steady, calm, and sure. Her journey had not been easy, but in standing up for herself, she had discovered a strength that no luxury could ever buy. And with that strength, Amelia Quinn knew she was truly home.